In this video, we're going to be talking about ecological succession and climax communities, and we're going to be talking about the process between these two different successions. So first is primary succession. Primary succession occurs when a natural event or human-made event happens in a certain area. This area is basically made up of abiotic objects such as rock or complete bare land. This complete bare land has no soil or any kind of vegetation or organisms living in it. So when it starts off like this, we can see this as a primary succession. So this bare rock eventually gets these prokaryotes and other microorganisms start to inhabit the bare rocks. One of these are lichens and moss. Lichens and moss grow on top of the rock, and soon they reproduce to create large populations of themselves. When they create large populations, they break down the matter or the rocks they're on and create a very small layer of soil, which is known as humus. The humus basically has a little bit of vegetation that allows grasses and very short plants to grow. Eventually they die and the process continues until it has enough nitrogen and enough carbon to be able to allow shrubs and bushes to grow on that bare rock or that bare land. And basically soon they die, and then young trees and pines with those nutrients of all these organisms dying will soon grow on top of this land, and eventually we will have a climax community. These lichens and moss and grass and herbs and the prokaryotes, when they come into this place, these are called pioneer species. The reason why we call this is because they are moving from place to place to be able to find the one with the least amount of competition. And over here, since it's completely bare with basically no vegetation, they would have the least amount of competition available for them. Then after that, we have intermediate species where shrubs and young trees and plants and pines start to grow into this certain area. This is where the vegetation starts to occur, and finally we have a climax community. So you move from bare rock to climax community. Now we'll move to secondary succession. Secondary succession, basically, instead of starting a bare rock, it starts at a climax community. However, some kind of disturbance, like a fire or a flood, could potentially ruin the ground over here. However, it does not completely remove it as to bare rock. Instead, it removes most of the living organisms. However, the soil still stays. The lichens and moss doesn't exactly grow, but newer like shrubs and fast growing plants like grasses and herbs start to grow, and then they die, and then shrubs and bushes take up that nutrients and nitrogen and carbon. Then they die, and then young trees grow and mature trees grow like over here, the oak trees. And basically here, unlike here, which is just bare rock, this has soil in it, and because this has soil, it makes the succession a lot more easier. So here this takes millions of years to happen, but here this probably takes around 100 to 200 years for it to grow back from a disturbance like fire or flood back over here to where it started, to fully mature into a climax community. So if you haven't noticed, these parts of the pioneer species, so basically the grasses are growing back, so it's coming from one part to the other part. Then we have intermediate species, which are the starting of the climax community, and then we have the actual climax community where it matures into those big trees that used to happen before the disturbance even started. The importance of succession is basically just to clean out the area. Like for example, if there was a lot of dead things on the ground, or if the ground, if it did not have enough nutrients to even support a forest in the first place, or there was a lot of organisms that were not able to survive or thrive, like the trees, because of the shade, then in some situations secondary or primary succession might be beneficial towards the area. And eventually, because of that, the new nutrients is formed, or the nutrients comes back to the soil, and that's how we're able to restart and create a new type of system over here that allows multiple species to thrive. This is basically they're creating new habitats. Human impact, although human impact has done a lot to primary or secondary succession, there hasn't been a lot in primary, but mainly in the secondary succession point. So things like uncontrolled wildfires or something like that might cause the secondary succession a lot. And the problem with that is let's say you have a complete forest and there's a wildfire, like this disturbance of fire, and then you end up with just the soil, and let's say they're in the intermediate species. Before they even reach the climax community, let's say another fire already starts. If the fire or the flooding, if it's happening more and more often, then what happens is that it's the soil is never going to be able to grow into an actual climax community, and eventually then it won't get the resources it needs to even start in the first place, meaning it will just be a bunch of dead grass in the end, because either you're burning it too much, or what's happening is you're flooding it too much, which disrupts all the nutrients in the area. So in conclusion, this is all about ecological succession, and how it starts at the how it starts from the beginning to the end, from beginning either being bare rock or being burnt like soil, all the way to a climax community. This can either take millions of years or just a few hundred years, based on the severity of the impact.